Tough acts to follow. I thought I wasn't going to be a puddle, and I'm not going to be a puddle, but there may be moments. First of all, an apology. Tuesday morning, I got up to take a look at the obituary. John had handcrafted it, spent a lot of time on it. It was perfect, it was wonderful. I read it, it was exactly the way it was supposed to be. And I said to Marianne, you have to take a look at this. It's exactly what it needs to be. And the only question she asked was, did it mention copy? As usual, I have a little stunned look on my face, rapid eye movement, and the answer was no, it didn't. So to Copy, who's not here, I apologize that you weren't mentioned in the obituary. Mom loved that cat, and that cat loved her. Copy was normally a shy and extremely reclusive cat. In fact, people rarely saw her. If you went to visit her apartment, you visit her at the cottage, you knew the cat was around, but you never saw the cat. In the last few weeks, though, she never left her bed. She stayed at Mom's side as nurses, PSWs, doctors, family, visitors came. And I'm pleased to report that Copy has taken on new quarters. She's gone to live with my daughter Alexandra and her boyfriend Wade. And even as we speak, she started the slow process of ripping apart Wade's furniture. Before I talk about Mom, I'm just going to say a very few thank yous. The first is to Wendy. Thank you for the countless Sunday dinners. Thank you for creating an atmosphere of love, and there was no place she would rather be. To Lynn Blake Dixon for being her first daughter. From the time we arrived in Waterloo in 1964 to her passing and to date. To Grace Christensen, who is not going to be here today. She's 101 and there are some health issues. But to Grace and her family, and particularly to Janet, thank you for including my mom in so many of your family activities. It meant a lot to her. To Donna McConnell, I don't know whether Donna's here or not, from the cottage, to Donna and her late husband Bruce, thank you so much over the last few years at the cottage. Thank you for looking in and making sure that she was okay. To the staff at the terrace on the square for treating Mom with kindness and dignity. To the staff at Freeport for their caring and gentle ways over Mom's last few days. To First United Church for the music, for the fellowship, for the love that endured well beyond 50 years. Her last visit here was Christmas Eve. She was wheeled over from the terrace in the square. Her ability's not great, her balance wasn't great, but I can attest to the fact that sitting next to her, she insisted upon standing up for every carol and singing as she always did. If you read the obituary, you'll know that Mom was born November 25th, 1925, died January 26th of this year at the age of 93. You'll know that she had a full life. You'll also know that Mom was the youngest of 6 children, born to Evan and Beryl Catford, that because of significant health issues, Mom was put out into foster care and eventually adopted by the Rutherford family. Jim and Mary were her parents, and she had a big brother, Robert. What you may not know is that Jim Rutherford was the vice president of Beatty Brothers, a manufacturing company in Fergus, and that in 1941, a dashing young man from London, Ontario, a recent graduate from the business program at University of Western Ontario, was hired by Beatty Brothers. That young man was Ross Venner McIntyre. The relationship started. In 1942, Dad enlisted in the Royal Canadian Artillery. Over the next 4 years, Dad served in Canada, the UK, Sicily, Italy, France, Germany, Holland, and Belgium. While overseas, Mom and Dad rode. Mom's 90th birthday, we had a gathering of the family. Before that time, we'd done a lot of social things, so there had been an open house at John's and various places. And the 90th, it was more of a family thing. And I think at the end of the dinner, we had decided to go around the table and talk a little bit about memories, thoughts of Grandma Mac. They were all nice. A lot of it was about music, some about athletics. And then when it came time for Mom to speak, oddly enough, she didn't really respond to those things. She talked about Dad. And one of the things she talked about was that when he was overseas, they wrote. And they had a secret code worked out before he left so that the letters would be able to communicate to her where he was and how he was doing, how he was feeling, that he was safe. Ross returned to Canada as Lieutenant Ross McIntyre in 1946. The relationship continued. They were married in September of 1949. 3 sons born, 1950, 52, and 54. In 1964, the McIntyres moved from Willowdale, now a part of the mass called Toronto, here to Waterloo. After arriving in Waterloo, Mom and Dad soon became fast friends with Bob and Noreen Blake and members of First United Church. The Blakes and the McIntyres were inseparable. The families got together for many dinners and games nights. When the children weren't around, Bob and Noreen and Mom and Dad played bridge. Bridge with the Blakes was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to bridge. Mom and Dad played bridge with the Henrys, the Dickens, the Christiansons, the Brides, and so many more. They were involved in church bridge, little bridge, bridge. Wherever they were playing bridge. It was a good social pastime. After Dad passed, Mom continued to play bridge 2 to 3 times per week, both here in the city and up at the cottage. She particularly enjoyed playing duplicate bridge at the 404 with Peter. And Peter, I understand you're here. And Peter, I didn't do my homework. My omission for your I apologize for not knowing your last name. You can come up and give me a swat at the end, and I do apologize. But she often talked about the enjoyment she got from playing bridge with you at the 404. Mom loved to work with her hands. In the early 60s, she built a kayak by hand in the basement of what was 9 Evan Road, the first McIntyre house. It was a tiny house. She crafted the skeleton and then stretched canvas over the skeleton before applying sealant to make sure it was watertight. The kayak was taken out of the basement through a window and up to the cottage, where it was used for decades. Mom knitted. She knitted hats, sweaters, and jackets for her family. There are some wonderful pictures of the 3 boys and Ross and Beryl with the classic beaver, elk, moose designs on those sweaters. She worked at hooking, needlepoint, crocheting. She created individual afghans for each of her grandchildren. Later in life, she crocheted prayer shawls. And it was fitting that at St. Mary's Hospital, one of the local priests or somebody came in, it wasn't a priest, and because it was a woman. In any event, no, that's a different thing. We're not going down that path. In any event, she was offered a prayer shawl, and she was pleased to take that, and we took that home. Mom loved working in her cottage gardens. She had both flower and vegetable gardens. Mom was also athletically inclined. She enjoyed a variety of sports. One of the things we were looking through the memorabilia, and we came across a certificate for a Bronze Cross, life-saving award for those who aren't initiated. It was in high school. It was during the war years, so it was a certificate, not a Bronze Cross. And on the back of the certificate, it said, you can turn this in once the war's over, basically, and get a real medal. Medal was scarce, obviously, and so I don't think she ever did, because she still had the certificate. At Victoria College, she played ice hockey and baseball. In 1947, which was her graduating year, both teams won the intramural championships at the University of Toronto. She loved to fish, something that was mentioned. I have often wondered now, reflecting back, whether it was basically an escape from her 3 boys. It was generally a solitary thing, but at the same time, I'm sure that she took great delight when she was coming in and getting close to the dock to see her 3 boys, clad only in bathing suits, dark brown, because there was no such thing as SPF 30, 40, 50, or 60, feet of leather, because no shoes were worn during the summertime, racing down to what was at that time a very rickety dock. And most times, that's my memory now, she had caught a fish. And then the boys would scramble along with her as she carried the fish up to prepare it for dinner. And there was a bit of a ritual to that. She would slice the fish open, and we would examine the insides of the fish. Sometimes it was an educational thing. She'd point out where the heart was and the rest of that stuff. But what we were waiting for was the opening of the stomach, so we could determine what exactly the fish ate before being caught. And if we were at all lucky, there was a whole crayfish or a small minnow in the stomach. Mom water skied. She skied into her 70s. When the slideshow does come on, you'll see her on a slalom ski. But my biggest memory, my fondest memory, is of her on those two great big red slabs of wood that came from Wally Simpson after they moved away, these handcrafted skis. And that's what she skied on mostly, and certainly in her latter years when two skis were necessary. But she did finally stop in her 70s. She enjoyed running, particularly in the Waterloo 10K Classic, and again, she ran into her 70s. Towards the end, it was the 5K that she was doing, and that's fine. She loved to sail. Her first sailboat was actually the kayak. It had been modified in a manner to accommodate a sail. Her keel was, or her rudder, I should say, was her paddle. She was able to acquire a wet water vessel at one point called an Invitation. It was a wonderful thing, but eventually the wet water wasn't as much fun, so she acquired a Colibri, which nobody's ever heard of, but they're more of a dry water vessel. She took Power Squadron from Mary and Dr. Drew Riddle. She was capable of navigating by the stars, but luckily did not do any night sailing. And Mom played golf. She played a lot of golf. There were lots of people, and I think most of us had an opportunity to play golf with Grandma Mac. There's tons of stories, but I'm just going to focus on an accomplishment, and that is the fact that she had 3 holes in one. Marvelous. Congratulations, Mom. Not that it's a competition, but when I look around at all the McIntyre clan, I believe we have 1 hole in one. And again, it's not a competition, but I think we're playing for a tie. Mom will also be remembered, and probably more particularly, for her love of music. She started playing piano at a very early age. She attained her grade 9 from the Royal Conservatory while she was in high school. And in fact, when she went to Victoria College, she took music and graduated in 1947 with an honors degree in music. Mom had the extraordinary gift of being able to play music by ear. For those who don't play the piano, that means if you hear a song, you don't need music. You just sit down and play. And she would play with a simple chord, and then she'd bring the other chords in, and it was always fun, always fun. A memory that I think Jim, John, and I will always cherish is the Angel song. That's why I was calling you this morning, John. I know you know the name of the song. I was doing something, so I said, don't bother, I was going to call it the Angel song. When we were young, and if we were sick, and sickness back then meant mumps or measles and things that don't exist anymore, of course, or on their way out, colds and flus. If we were ill and we were at the end of the day, Mom would make a special point coming in, making sure that we were tucked in securely, and then singing in the voice of an angel, the Angel song. And the Angel song, I don't remember the words to. Again, John being John, had printed it off at some point and said he had it, and I didn't get it. But in any event, the Angel song was basically a reassurance for us that there were angels around looking after us and everything was going to be fine. Mom sang in the choir here at First United. She played for a number of years with the Bell Choir. At the cottage, she attended Virginia United Church and would often fill in playing the organ for them. I talked earlier about Mom's 90th birthday, and I alluded to the fact that we all had an opportunity to talk a little bit about Mom, Grandma Mac, about our impressions and our thoughts about her. And certainly the most common of the themes that were discussed were her love of music and how music was such an important part of her life. And when I was stumbling through and looking for factually accurate things, I came across her her yearbook from her graduating year from the University of Toronto. And the people that were there with her obviously knew her. And so there's a lovely picture of her in the yearbook. And then there's a short write-up on her, and this is what it says. They acknowledge, first of all, that she's from Fergus, Ontario. And this is what it says. 24-hour day of honor music, executive meetings, athletics, and Ainslie. And Ainslie is Ainslie Hall at Victoria College. And then a short poem which has been modified slightly to recognize Beryl. A ring on her finger from Ross, and she knows that she shall have music wherever she goes.